we do have Rel here, and I wanted to be able to get her perspective on what to expect from Trajan Langdon. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. How y'all doing?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for giving us your time this morning. Well, you guys already know Trajan Langdon is now the president of basketball operation title for the Detroit Pistons. With the Pelicans, he was their GM. And we're all wondering, what are we to expect from Trajan Langdon here with the Detroit Pistons?
I feel like Trajan's an interesting guy, but in a mysterious way. Like I feel like he was here this whole time and we didn't know a ton about him. But a lot of that is because he was working with David Griffin. And David Griffin is the face and the mouthpiece of the front office, so we didn't hear from Trajan a whole lot. And in the one time that I was able to actually talk to Trajan, he expressed to me that he enjoys that. He's like, if Griff wants to do that, that's fine. I'll just hang in the back. You know what I mean? So he put his head down and get to work, doing whatever he's doing. But yeah, I don't know if you guys know a lot about David Griffin, but he likes to be in the front. So Trajan's like, cool, yeah, go ahead. But I do find that funny that he's changed his bio already because he's more of a Twitter lurker. He doesn't tweet. He doesn't like a whole lot. So it's funny that he went on there and changed his bio real quick.
Oh, man. So with Trajan Langdon, obviously one of the biggest things that a lot of Pistons fans are wondering right now is this aspect of potential Brandon Ingram trade. Obviously, in our world, we're hearing it from the perspective that we want to hear it. But in your world, what are you hearing about Brandon Ingram? Is Detroit one of those teams that you hear as a potential trade candidate for Brandon Ingram, or are you hearing other things?
It's mostly fan speculation at this point. I think there are a handful of people, because I'm not credentialed. Let me start there, right? So there's a lot of people in the fan base who are, trade machine connoisseurs, if you will.
Right.
And they're looking at, Detroit's number 5 pick or whatever have you, plus maybe Jalen Duren or something like that. But you kind of have to wonder, as a Pelicans fan, is this guy even available? Is the number 5 pick even available? Do the Pistons want to give Brandon Ingram, the money he's looking for? Do they want to give him a max contract and things like that? So, there's a lot of inner workings that we as fans don't necessarily understand in terms of contracts. And people just think you can plug in the trade machine and get whoever, and everything's all good. But it doesn't necessarily work like that. And then obviously they have the connection with their agents and things like that. But as far as I know, Brandon Ingram wanted to stay here, but he had a very ugly outing in the playoffs, and I just don't know if the Pelicans can continue to go down that road building around him and Zion Williamson, because you basically got two guys who are just 2-point threats because Brandon refuses to shoot a three. So it's been tough, but it's been 5 years and we've seen the same thing. Either somebody's hurt and missing, or they do play together and they look good, but then they blow a dozen double-digit leads, and it's just they're not progressing the way that they should. And the Western Conference isn't allowing for them to have more time to grow. Like you got to go now. So B.I. may be on his way out just because of that.
Yeah, Raul, Matt Broder here. It's really nice to meet you, and thank you so much for coming on. I want to ask you about Trajan Langdon again real quick, because I know he was in the general manager role in New Orleans and is now moving over to president of basketball operations. In his role with the Pelicans, what type of general manager was he? And I asked that, is he someone we can expect to, dominate through the draft, or is he savvy making deals in the free agency market, whether it's negotiating with agents or with other teams? What type of leader is he, or that we can expect here in Detroit?
So here's where it gets tricky, right? Because I was bringing up David Griffin, and there's so many people around the league who refer to David Griffin as the Pelicans general manager. They don't even know that Trajan Langdon was the general manager. Like, that's how behind the scenes he was. So a lot of deals, when we talk about deals, either potential deals or deals that we made in the past, everyone refers to, if Griffin had done this, if Griffin had done that. And I'm stuck wondering how much of this stuff has Trajan Langdon himself actually done. And because I'm not, I don't have so many sources and things of that nature, it's hard to tell what he's done. But as a group, right, the Pelicans front office between Trajan Langdon and Swin Cash, shout out to the Detroit shop, right?
Shout out.
And Trajan Langdon, there's the way that they operated as a unit. Because I'm not sure if it's just Trajan, but the way that they operated as a unit, they won't make a deal if they feel like they're going to lose that deal. So there's a lot of times at the trade deadline, we just didn't do anything. And from a fan perspective, you're like, man, Dallas went out there and got X, Y, and Z, and we just didn't do anything. We're sitting on our hands, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not necessarily the case. They're poking around. They're trying to make deals, and if the deal that they want isn't there, they're absolutely not going to make any move. And so then as a fan, you're like, man, these guys don't do anything, But I think that they're just more of a, play better safe than sorry, more of like a conservative front office. And again, can't necessarily say that was just Trajan, but as Trajan being the general manager in his tenure here, that's the way they operated as far as trades go. Like when we got C.J. McCollum, C.J. requested a trade, and he orchestrated for himself to come to the Pelicans. I don't necessarily know if we would have gone out and got somewhat of a big fish like that had he not specifically wanted to come here. Take that how you will.
That's a really interesting take, because there's a lot of moves out there that we especially as Detroit fans, we want anything good. People who cover it, people who watch it, people who observe it, season ticket holders, and we see some of the moves that the Pelicans have made over the years, and we will attribute that instantly to our guy Trajan Langdon. So it's interesting to hear that perspective that maybe some of those moves weren't all him. Now, given the situation or the position that the Pelicans in, and believe me, I would trade spots with them in a heartbeat. I would trade rosters in a heartbeat. How confident are you that Trajan Langdon is a guy that's going to come to Detroit and really kind of have some of the same success here that we've seen the Pelicans enjoy over the last few years? Because I like a lot of their players. We were talking about it earlier. Like we would take, give us, if we miss out on Ingram, hey, Najee Marshall,
CJ,
Herb Jones,
Trey Murphy. Like I'm like, hey,
Alvarado, bring them all.
Basically anybody.
Dyson Daniels.
Oh, I gotta tell y'all don't get your hopes up for Herb Jones, right? Don't get your hopes up for Trey.
You're not gonna let him go?
It's not happening. It's not happening. But I will say Najee is he's an unrestricted free agent, I believe. So he's a guy who you could see potentially, getting a bag this offseason. So good luck to him, man. He's a great guy. Undrafted, came in and did his work, and now he's getting ready to get paid this summer, I'm sure. So, but I think that the guy who's getting promoted in Trajan Langdon's place, his name is Bryson Graham. He's been with the Pelicans for over a decade. He started literally as an intern, and now he's expected to be promoted to the GM. Now, he was their assistant GM. They had two assistant GMs. One of them was more of a contract statistical guy, and then Bryson was more of a draft guy, more of a scout guy. So Bryson was more responsible for finding the gems in the draft, like Herb Jones, who was a second round pick, number 35. Now he's first team NBA All Defense in his third season in the league. So Bryson had the talent of finding those gems like that. Now, how much of that can we attribute to Trajan? I don't know. We give Trajan credit for listening to Bryson, right? But which of these guys did Trajan find? Did he find Trey Murphy over at Virginia? It's hard to tell exactly what his fingerprint has been on things, because he's such a quiet and reserved guy working behind someone who keeps jumping in front of the camera like David Griffin. It's almost like what Suge Knight was saying about come to death row, you know what I mean? Like if you don't want the president of basketball ops on all the press conferences, instead of the general manager doing it, come over on this side if you don't like that kind of thing, So it'll be interesting for me to see what Trajan brings to you guys' organization. But I think for him as a president of basketball operations, if he's not being the president of ops and the GM at the same time, I think he'll move out the way and let the GM operate as they need to. But also, he's not just going to completely move out of the way. He'll have his hand in things. But I think that he's a relaxed guy who gets the job done, but he's not going to be, like a stickler for certain things, if that makes sense.
Man, that's a lot of good information, because we're sitting here, like I said, we're waiting for this press conference to get the opportunity to go in there and ask a few questions to Trajan Langdon and kind of get a feel for his philosophy, as well as what he currently believes about the construction of the Detroit Pistons. I just want, just from an outside perspective, okay, and be easy on this. What is your take on the Detroit Pistons right now, their roster construction, and the potential that this thing can get turned around?
Well, last season definitely wasn't going to put myself through games during that long losing streak. I don't know how any of y'all were able to sit through that, but just I'm pulling the roster up here now. Yeah, I can't imagine, man. I can't imagine. But I mean, obviously, like guys like Jaden Ivey, really high on him, really high on Cade. I think, what did he have some sort of nagging injury or something last season that kept him off for a little while?
Yeah, he's been dealing with some. We'll call them nagging injuries. It started serious. Yeah, he's dealing with some injuries, or was these last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the overall roster, it doesn't make sense to me why they were losing the way that they were losing. Like you almost from the outside looking in, you think there's no way that these guys are even trying to win. Like, how can you lose that many games in a row, right? But like it like, are they tanking? You know what I mean? As a fan, personally, I'm not a fan of tanking, right? So like, I don't know if you. Watching them, I don't know if you think, okay, well, you know, in the end this will be good because you still end up with the 5th pick. You still didn't end up with first, right? So when I found out that happened, I actually made a video talking about how the Hawks won, and I said, if there's any Pistons fans listening to this, I'm so sorry because I don't understand how the lottery works to where you can see a team be 10th and in the play-in and then end up with the first seed, and then there's a team like Detroit that won 14 games and you get 5th. I don't get it. It's tough. So I know I'm a big fan of viewing things in a way where things can't stay the same forever. So the team is going to turn around. It's just a matter of how long will it take for that to happen? How long will it take for them to be competitive again? How many years until we at least see them back, either in the play-in or maybe fighting for a top 6 spot? That's the big question. And you just never really know because injuries can derail you the same way that they've been derailing the Pelicans, you know? Like, we have 49 wins and still ended up in the play-in. Wow. and our star player got hurt literally in a play-in game that we shouldn't have even been in, but we didn't take care of business. So that just, everything unraveled from there. So you can have a relatively good season on paper, and then things can still, end up derailing you. So hopefully the Pistons don't have that problem. Hopefully when they do turn things around, they can, get back into a competitive level and stay there. But you just really never know in this league.
Man, you know what, Rel? Thank you for giving us your time. That's it's some good insight, man. It was cool to hear the perspective from somebody else on these Detroit Pistons. This thing started off with some hope, and they never really finished it, man. It's like like when you go into like a hibachi and they put the garlic on the grill. Yeah. And it's like, yo, it smells amazing. And you're waiting like, bro, are you gonna put the rice on? Are you putting the steak on there? And they just never do. It's like that's what's happened here over the last couple years. So they started good. The butter and the garlic is on the grill. You got Cade here, and then they just didn't do anything else. And it's weird, but I hope that Trajan Langdon brings some type of clarity and an actual NBA structure to how the Detroit Pistons front office decides to operate. When Troy Weaver was hired here, we didn't have a president of basketball operations title. They didn't give him that title, though he was in that last year in OKC, he was actually the VP of the vice president of basketball operations. So he had experience in that role. But they told him, and it's been reported via Omari Sankofa of the Detroit Free Press, that they were supposed to work as a tandem. Meaning, I get the sense that Troy was just kind of, hey, I suggest this, and if the guys ahead of him or kind of above him in the hierarchy agreed, then they were going to move forward. What I'm hoping with Trajan Langdon coming here now is that we operate a little bit more traditionally as it relates to the PBO and the GM being able to work together to really put together a team that can compete in this modern NBA. So I appreciate you, Rel. You want to tell the people where they can find your work and everything?
Yeah, for sure. I think you mentioned it early on. It's relmyers.com. That's RELMYERS. And I also have a Pelicans podcast called Pels and Whistles.
Definitely. Thank you so much for the time and answering the questions. I know you got to get in to the next JOB as well, but we appreciate you greatly from the Wake Up Woodward crew. So
thank you, Ralph.
Yes, thank you, Ralph.
Thank you. Y'all have a good one.
Hey, you too.
Appreciate it.